Preparing for application support at HCA Healthcare interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 25 key questions you're likely to face. For each question you'll see a sample answer followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. How would you troubleshoot a MEDITECH application issue reported by a hospital user? I first clarify the user, workflow, location, time, error message, and business impact. I determine whether the issue affects one workstation, one department, or multiple facilities. Then I reproduce it safely, review application and interface logs, check recent changes, and compare against known incidents. If patient care could be delayed, I escalate immediately while providing a safe workaround. I document evidence, timestamps, decisions, and validation steps so resolution is controlled and auditable. While answering, cover incident validation, user impact, error reproduction, logs, recent changes, interfaces, database dependencies, escalation, documentation, and patient safety considerations. Question 2. How do you prioritize incidents in a healthcare production environment? I prioritize by patient safety risk and operational impact, not by who reports the issue first. A medication, emergency department, registration, or clinical documentation outage receives immediate attention, especially without a workaround. I classify severity using affected users, locations, functionality, and urgency, then assign ownership and communication cadence. I continually reassess priority as new facts emerge. Clear severity definitions and documented rationale keep decisions consistent across shifts and teams. Make sure to cover impact, urgency, patient safety, number of users, critical clinical workflows, service level targets, executive visibility, workarounds, and reassessment as conditions change. Question 3. Describe your process for managing a Severity 1 production incident. For a Severity 1 incident, I confirm scope quickly, declare the incident, and establish an incident commander, technical leads, communications owner, and scribe. I open a bridge, bring in the right application, infrastructure, interface, and vendor teams, and publish concise updates at agreed intervals. We stabilize service first, using an approved workaround when necessary. After recovery, I validate critical workflows with users, preserve evidence, and lead a blameless review. In your answer, talk about rapid triage, incident commander duties, bridge coordination, stakeholder updates, workaround decisions, vendor escalation, timelines, recovery validation, and post-incident review. Question 4. What information would you collect before escalating a MEDITECH issue to a vendor or senior team? I provide a complete, privacy-safe escalation package: environment, facility or department, affected workflow, user role, timestamps with time zone, exact error text, reproducible steps, screenshots without protected health information, logs, recent changes, scope, and business impact. I list every troubleshooting action and result, plus any workaround. That prevents duplicated effort and lets the receiving team begin diagnosis immediately. I also identify the required response time based on incident severity. Be sure to mention reproducible steps, screenshots, timestamps, environment, affected users, error codes, logs, recent changes, business impact, attempted fixes, and privacy-safe evidence. Question 5. How would you investigate an interface failure between MEDITECH and another healthcare system? I trace the message end-to-end. Source transaction, interface engine, transformation, transport, destination application, and acknowledgement. I check queue depth, connection status, rejected messages, timestamps, mapping errors, and retry behavior. I compare a failed message with a successful one while protecting patient data. After correcting the cause, I coordinate controlled reprocessing, verify no duplicates were created, reconcile counts, and document the recovery with clinical stakeholders. Focus on message flow, HL7 or integration standards, queues, acknowledgements, transformations, connectivity, interface engines, retries, duplicates, and reconciliation with source and destination systems. Question 6. What is your approach to supporting HL7 messages and interface queues? I understand HL7 as structured healthcare messages containing segments, fields, and components that represent events such as admissions, orders, or results. When a queue grows, I inspect acknowledgements, parsing errors, routing rules, connectivity, and transformation logs. I avoid blindly replaying messages because duplicates can create clinical risk. I isolate the failure, correct configuration or connectivity, reprocess only validated transactions, and reconcile source and destination records afterward. Cover message structure, segments, acknowledgements, queue monitoring, validation, retries, dead letter handling, duplicate prevention, routing, and escalation for mapping or connectivity problems. Question 7. How would you handle a slow MEDITECH application reported by multiple departments? I first establish when latency began, which workflows and facilities are affected, and whether response times are consistently slow or intermittent. I compare application, database, infrastructure, network, and interface metrics against normal baselines. I check recent deployments, batch jobs, connection pools, resource saturation, and error rates. While specialists investigate, I communicate scope and workarounds. I only declare recovery after representative clinical workflows perform normally and monitoring remains stable. In your answer, distinguish application, database, network, endpoint, and integration causes. Establish baseline metrics, check concurrency, capacity, recent changes, and user impact. Question 8. How do you distinguish an application defect from a network or infrastructure problem? I use a layered approach rather than assuming the application is responsible. I compare affected and unaffected users, locations, devices, workflows, and environments. Connectivity tests, latency, DNS, authentication, server health, database metrics, application logs, and dependency status help isolate the layer. A single workflow failure with healthy infrastructure suggests application logic, broad timeouts suggest network or capacity issues. I document evidence before escalating, which reduces handoffs and guesswork. Mention layered troubleshooting, comparison testing, monitoring, endpoint checks, connectivity tests, logs, dependency health, user patterns, and evidence-based escalation rather than assumptions. Question 9. Tell me about a time you resolved a recurring production incident. In one recurring incident, users periodically lost access after an overnight process. I correlated tickets with job schedules, authentication logs, and server resource data, finding that a batch task exhausted available connections. We added monitoring and a temporary schedule adjustment, then implemented connection cleanup and capacity testing through change control. I measured the result through incident volume and failed login trends. The key lesson was treating repeated incidents as a problem management opportunity. Make sure to cover incident history, pattern analysis, root cause investigation, temporary mitigation, problem management, permanent fix, change control, and measurable improvement. Question 10. How do you perform root cause analysis after a major healthcare application outage? I build a factual timeline from monitoring, tickets, deployment records, logs, and stakeholder interviews. I separate the trigger from contributing conditions, such as weak alerting, capacity limits, or incomplete testing. Using 5 whys or a fault tree, I identify actions that reduce recurrence, not just the immediate symptom. The review stays blameless and produces assigned owners, deadlines, detection improvements, and a follow-up check that verifies effectiveness. Focus on a timeline, contributing factors, evidence, 5 whys or fault trees, detection gaps, change history, corrective actions, owners, deadlines, and a blameless culture. Question 11. How would you manage a production change to a MEDITECH-related application? I begin with a documented change request describing scope, risk, dependencies, implementation steps, validation, and rollback. I confirm testing in a representative non-production environment and obtain required technical and clinical approvals. Before execution, I communicate timing, expected impact, support contacts, and downtime procedures. During implementation, I use a checklist and capture evidence. Afterward, I validate critical workflows, monitor closely, and close the change only after stakeholders confirm stability. Be sure to mention change assessment, clinical approval, testing, rollback planning, maintenance windows, communication, validation, audit evidence, and separation of duties. Question 12. What would you include in a rollback plan for a failed production deployment? A rollback plan defines objective failure thresholds, decision authority, exact steps, dependencies, backups, version identifiers, and expected duration. I verify that the previous application version can safely work with current schemas and interfaces. Reversing code without considering data compatibility can worsen the outage. After rollback, I test authentication, core clinical workflows, integrations, and reporting. I communicate status clearly, preserve logs, and create a follow-up change for the underlying defect. In your answer, cover rollback triggers, backups, version control, data compatibility, dependency sequencing, approval authority, validation tests, communication, and post-rollback monitoring. Question 13. How do you support clinical users during a planned or unplanned downtime? I activate the approved downtime procedure and coordinate with clinical leadership, service desk, infrastructure, application teams, and communications. Users need concise instructions for safe paper or alternate workflows, patient identification, order capture, and urgent escalation. I provide regular status updates without speculating. During recovery, we validate access and critical functions, then support controlled data reconciliation and duplicate prevention. A downtime is successful only when care workflows safely return to normal. Cover downtime procedures, communication, paper workflows, read-only access, patient identification, reconciliation, recovery validation, training, and coordination with clinical leadership. Question 14. How would you protect HIPAA and patient information while troubleshooting? I follow minimum necessary access and use only approved accounts, tools, and secure communication channels. When sharing evidence, I redact identifiers and avoid copying patient data into tickets, personal devices, or unapproved systems. I verify recipients, preserve audit trails, and never bypass access controls simply to speed troubleshooting. If I suspect inappropriate disclosure, I stop sharing, notify the security or privacy team immediately, and document facts without speculating. Mention minimum necessary access, role-based permissions, secure channels, redaction, audit logs, approved tools, no local copies, authentication, and immediate reporting of suspected exposure. Question 15. How do you communicate technical issues to nurses, physicians, and operational leaders? I translate technical status into operational consequences. What is unavailable, who is affected, whether patient care is at risk, and what users should do now. I give a known facts summary, workaround, owner, and next update time, avoiding jargon and unsupported predictions. For clinicians, I keep instructions actionable and concise. For leaders, I include scope, risk, and recovery estimate. I listen carefully because frontline observations often reveal hidden impact. Focus on audience-specific language, patient impact, current status, workaround, next update time, confidence level, empathy, and avoiding unexplained technical jargon. Question 16. What service level metrics would you track for an application support team? I track first response, mean time to acknowledge, mean time to restore, resolution time, SLA compliance, backlog aging, reopen rate, and escalation volume. For production support, I also monitor availability, recurring incidents, change-related failures, interface processing, and business impact duration. Metrics should drive improvement rather than reward ticket closure. I segment results by severity and workflow, then pair them with user feedback and patient safety indicators. Be sure to mention first response, resolution time, SLA compliance, backlog, reopen rate, recurrence, availability, customer satisfaction, escalation quality, and patient impact indicators. Question 17. How would you reduce an application support backlog without sacrificing quality? I start by segmenting the backlog by severity, age, application, cause, and required skill. Critical incidents are separated from routine requests, while stale tickets are validated rather than closed automatically. I use swarming for complex issues, standard templates for common resolutions, and knowledge articles for repeat questions. Automation can handle safe diagnostics and routing. I review aging and reopen rates weekly so speed never replaces accurate resolution or useful documentation. Cover categorization, severity separation, aging analysis, automation, knowledge articles, swarming, ownership, recurring problem elimination, capacity planning, and quality checks. Question 18. Describe how you would create a useful knowledge base article for MEDITECH support. I write for the support person who may encounter the issue during a stressful shift. The article includes symptoms, affected workflow, scope, prerequisites, safe step-by-step actions, expected results, rollback or stop conditions, and escalation criteria. Screenshots contain no protected information. I add search-friendly terms, version applicability, validation steps, and an owner with a review date. After publishing, I measure reuse and feedback, then revise unclear or outdated instructions. In your answer, include audience, symptoms, scope, prerequisites, exact steps, screenshots without FI, decision points, escalation criteria, validation, and review ownership. Question 19. How do you handle a ticket when you cannot reproduce the reported problem? I do not close an issue merely because it is not reproducible. I collect exact timestamps, user role, device, location, workflow, inputs, error text, and frequency, then compare affected and healthy environments. I review logs and monitoring around the reported event and ask the user for safe evidence. If the issue is intermittent, I add targeted logging or monitoring. I provide interim guidance, maintain ownership, and define clear closure criteria. Mention precise questioning, environment comparison, timestamps, logs, session data, monitoring, intermittent behavior, user follow-up, temporary guidance, and continued ownership. Question 20. How would you investigate an authentication or single sign-on issue affecting hospital users? I determine whether the failure affects one account, one role, one facility, or everyone. I check account status, password or lockout state, directory synchronization, group and role mapping, federation responses, certificates, time synchronization, and application logs. I compare a failing account with a known good account without exposing credentials. After correction, I test representative workflows and confirm access is appropriate, because restoring login while granting excessive permissions creates a security problem. Cover identity lifecycle, account status, role mapping, directory services, federation, certificates, time synchronization, application logs, least privilege, and testing with representative accounts. Question 21. How do you verify that a production incident is truly resolved? Resolution requires more than a server showing green. I confirm the technical fix, then test the affected workflow with representative roles and, when appropriate, clinical or operational users. I check error rates, latency, queues, integrations, and monitoring over a defined stability period. I communicate that service is restored only when exit criteria are met. Finally, I document validation evidence, residual risk, and any follow-up problem or change record. Focus on technical and functional validation, representative users, monitoring, error rates, interfaces, duration of stability, stakeholder confirmation, and documented exit criteria. Question 22. What would you do if a workaround could restore service but might create duplicate clinical data? I would pause and assess the clinical and data integrity risk with the application owner and clinical leadership. I would not recommend mass retries or parallel entry without understanding idempotency and reconciliation. If approved, we would define a controlled process, unique transaction checks, ownership, audit logging, and post-recovery reconciliation. If the risk remains unacceptable, I would use the safer downtime workflow. Restoring availability quickly is valuable, but corrupted or duplicated clinical data can be worse. Be sure to mention risk assessment, clinical ownership, duplicate prevention, approval, controlled execution, reconciliation, auditability, and choosing safety over speed. Question 23. How do you collaborate with infrastructure, database, security, and vendor teams during an incident? I establish a shared incident record containing scope, timeline, symptoms, hypotheses, evidence, actions, and owners. Each specialist receives a focused question rather than a vague request to investigate everything. I prevent conflicting changes by routing decisions through the incident commander and recording approvals. On the bridge, I summarize findings, unresolved risks, and next actions. Afterward, I confirm vendor recommendations, internal ownership, and deadlines before closing the collaboration. Mention clear ownership, shared timeline, evidence-based hypotheses, structured handoffs, bridge discipline, escalation paths, communication cadence, and avoiding parallel conflicting changes. Question 24. How would you use monitoring and alerting to improve MEDITECH production support? I monitor indicators that reflect the user and clinical workflow, not only server health. Examples include response time, failed logins, interface queue age, rejected messages, transaction success, capacity, and availability of critical dependencies. Alerts need actionable thresholds, ownership, severity, and escalation routing. Excessive noise trains teams to ignore warnings. I pair technical dashboards with synthetic or workflow checks and review alert performance after incidents to close detection gaps. Cover meaningful service indicators, availability, latency, queues, failed transactions, capacity, alert thresholds, noise reduction, dashboards, escalation routing, and user-centered monitoring. Question 25. Why do you want to work in application support at HCA Healthcare? I want to apply my production support skills where reliability has a direct human impact. HCA Healthcare's scale makes disciplined incident management, secure systems, and dependable clinical workflows especially important. I enjoy troubleshooting under pressure, communicating clearly with technical and frontline teams, and turning recurring issues into permanent improvements. I would bring ownership, careful documentation, and respect for privacy and patient safety. The role combines meaningful service with the engineering discipline I value. In your answer, connect technical troubleshooting, healthcare reliability, patient safety, teamwork, continuous improvement, service ownership, and respect for privacy and clinical operations. If you are still with us, congratulations, you are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.